21st of April is the deadline. Time is running up, but you have an opportunity to be part of these global universities. And through the ALX pathways, you have an opportunity to study at global universities in person or hybrid and also online. And to gain access, you'll complete a comprehensive 8-month ALX pathways. And this helps just to get you ready for these opportunities in these universities. So that by the time you're getting in there, culture shock and whatnot have been dealt with. You're getting in and ready to go shine and win. Alex says for you to get here, you go to bit.ly, that is bit.ly/LX Pathways SFM. You get an opportunity to learn about leadership, entrepreneurship, and communication designed to prepare you for successful university application. 21st of April is the deadline. Go ahead and start applying.
There you go. And then I can shop, I can play, I can fuel, I can travel, and I can earn while spending?
Yes. If it were a mathematical problem, you'd say that equals World Credit MasterCard by I&M Bank. That's what it would equals to. Everything you've said.
Yes.
But it also equals to something else. Points.
Okay.
Not just points in terms of dots on a line or dots on a white page. It means the money you spend, a sensible portion of it is given back to you in terms of points, and it has a shilling value. So as you spend, you earn more. Now, if you accumulate it adequately over time, you will be in a position to actually do the same thing that you were doing, but now with the points. And the points are called Milele points. How do you do this? You need to go to the I&M Bank on the Go platform. That's where you get this. But now let me put the icing on the cake. The icing is as follows. If you happen to be the 20th client who registers, what will then happen is that you will get 50,000 Milele points, which is equal to, as I'd said, 50,000 Kenya shillings. All right. Can life get better?
It can't.
It can't.
I'm telling you. Can it? Okay. So the sound of laughter that you heard came from one Patrick Analo, who is the Chief Officer, Urban Development and Planning at Nairobi City County, and he's our guest this hour, and he's already in the hot seat. Patrick, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
Yeah?
Yeah, and you?
I'm all right. Yeah.
Happy to see you.
I'm very happy to see you too.
Thank you.
And for real, I'm saying that.
Yes.
Today you're not sure what anybody's saying, whether they're actually telling you or they're trying to fool you. But that one,
yes,
I'm telling you, I'm happy to see you, and I'm glad that you're here.
Happy to see you too.
Yeah. All right. So, you, of course, are sitting in the hot seat of the Situation Room, and as CT normally does every week, he's in a different African country, and he is going to share the proverb with you today, and we'd like you to interpret that for us and tell us what that means to you.
I am actually. Our proverbs are from the country known as the Comoros. Okay? Archipelago, group of islands, quite a number of them. This mixture of units that form the country have a very rich history. Rich, documented beginning at a time that one country, many centuries ago. Now, when you talk about centuries, well, the earth existed many more centuries before then, but this particular country, because of where it is situated, it was the pathway for many trade routes. So as a result of that, many people came there, passed by there. The Arabs passed by there, the Portuguese passed by there. It's a long history. But the thing that distinguishes it, since it got its independence in 1975, the country has experienced more than 20 coup attempts. That doesn't make for very much stability, but that's history. Today, we're looking at the proverb from that country. A beggar won't mind being insulted, comma. A beggar who cannot take insults will go hungry. Difficult profession, this begging.
This begging.
It comes with all manner of things.
Insult.
It's like a dog with fleas. Yes.
Already a dog.
You're really a dog, and people actually call you dog. And then you have fleas. Flea-ridden dog. Not good.
Patrick?
Yeah, so it's a very deep, saying. But I think my interpretation is that the way you lead life, the choices you make in life, which eventually determine how you lead life, it all depends on you. You may choose to be one who has to, go through insults in order to be assisted.
Yep.
Or you may choose to stand by your principles and really suffer. So, it all depends on you, on how you want to lead a life, particularly if you're a needy person.
Hard choices, eh? Particularly if you're a needy person. All right. Well, it's kind of like the dog. It still needs the bone, eh?
Just don't be needy.
And that's the same if you're a needy country.
Well done, CT.
Just don't be needy, pretty much.
Needy with plan.
Yeah.
So speaking about needs and plans, we're in Nairobi.
Yes.
And the county is, of course, we know, the center of commercialization for the country. Many says that it shouldn't be a county, it should be a regional administration district, and that it's just too big to be handled by county management in terms of governorship or that kind of administration, that it's just too big. And that developments that need to take place then essentially make Nairobi the beacon for the rest of the country, right? And so the conversation that we're having this morning is looking at the development of the county and saying that, okay, there seem to be developments all over the place. And we're not just talking about infrastructure development, all kinds of things. There's water here, there's clean the river, there's, feed people, there's deflood areas. So many things are going on at the same time. So the question is, to continue to secure Nairobi as the beacon for the rest of the country, and indeed one that the world looks at, we can't run away from who's set up here as international entities. How are you going to regularize? And we have sub-counties in this county. How are you going to regularize all of that to make sure that the development agenda is actually being met? And that's forming the basis of our conversation this hour. So I guess that's the big one broad question that we can ask you, Patrick, because you sit right in that seat. What are we looking at now in terms of progress, and how does Nairobi actually look from that bird's eye view?
Yeah, thank you so much, Ndu, City and my brother. Let me start by saying globally, the new urban agenda has a main theme of leaving no one behind. What that means basically is that cities and municipal authorities must undertake necessary, plans, interventions, initiatives that make sure that the urban poor are not left behind as cities, industrialize and urbanize. So it focuses on issues of provision of infrastructure, particularly in the informal settlements or areas that have urbanized without really being within the planning framework. It looks at the quality of life, security of tenure, and particularly talking about regularization. Regularization basically is the process of bringing into the framework of development control developments that have taken place without prerequisite approval from government. And for the city of Nairobi, we are mainly looking at settlements like Tasia, which was initially National Social Security Fund land that was occupied, or rather invaded, by people without really getting approval from National Security Services Fund, NSSF. They subdivided the land, they put up structures. We are looking at areas like Utawala, where we had land buying companies that were established just before independence as part of the Africanization program of land acquisition in our city. This land buying company allocated plots to members through share certificates, and because they did not have title deeds, they could not submit applications to the county government of Nairobi. And that also goes to areas like Kasarani and Mwiki, and an area around Kangundo Road called Kiambu Dandora, which takes the part of Mama Lucy Hospital. And then we have areas also which is land originally that belonged to the city council, the predecessor of Nairobi county government. the land was subdivided and people allocated through allotment letters and leases. And this includes areas like Umoja, Moja 2, Dandora, we have Kariobangi.
Yeah.
So these developments, we have a program which started in 2015 and expired in 2018. The current government has designed a bill that is awaiting enactment at the county government of Nairobi, and together with the new building code of 2024, we have a clear framework that will guide submission of development applications for people who put up structures without getting approval from the county government of Nairobi. Yeah.
Okay. And how is that going? I think that's the question. That when you look at then regularization of this development, and you have individuals who seem to be operating ex parte when it comes to the county government, how then do you do that? Because one would assume that there's a plan. There are CIDPs. This happens every year, or rather every 5 years. What then happens when you have operations that are counter to what the plan actually is?
Yeah, so this regularization program, as I said, is actually part of our CIDP, the 5-year plan, that you'll bring into development control framework, structures that have taken place without approval, that you look at their functionality in terms of structural stability and ascertain through engineering tests, ascertain are they habitable, that you then go further and make sure that the roads, the reserves which are meant for roads, the reserves which are meant for sewer are secured, and you'll be able to grade them, or you'll be able to tarmac, you'll be able to extend the sewer line, so that the people who are living in those settlements have access to municipal services, just like other city residents. And I think, as I said, this program started in 2015. The law that was formulated at that time came to an end in 2018 because it was a law mainly, it was like amnesty within 3 years for these people to be able to submit those applications. I think the area that succeeded at that time to submit the applications within that period is the area of pipeline. But the rest of the city, particularly the 4 embakassis, were not able to submit applications, mainly because they did not have title deeds. Now, the last government of President Uhuru gave about 10,000 title deeds to people in these areas I've talked about. And these are the people we are targeting, that now you have a title deed. You have a structure of 4 floors, 6 floors, you're collecting rent. You want services from the county government. You, at some time, you also want to get bank loans using the development you have, the property you have. We are calling upon these people to submit the applications so that they're evaluated. The ones which meet standard requirements in the building code and also as provided in the draft regularization bill of Nairobi County will be approved. There are some which do not meet the requirements. And through professional advice of architects, engineers and physical planners, necessary retrofitting adjustments again will be provided.
If one wants to get, what did you call it? Approval.
Approval.
Yes.
What is this process like?
Yeah, approval is a regulated process, a city, through the Physical and Land Use Planning Act. It starts with the...
and this act, Yamaka Gani?
2019.
Okay.
And this act provides that you must first access the services of a physical planner who will who must be registered and licensed. And this physical planner will submit to the county government an application requesting for planning approval. Let me say, for instance, you want to put up a multi-story structure. That involves then changing the use of the land from single dwelling is an agricultural land, for instance, or it's a single dwelling unit land, and the area has now been allowed to develop beyond single dwelling. The planner will submit the application. Once it is approved, then you move to the next professional, who is an architect.
Go ahead, please.
The architect then now prepares what you call an architectural plan city. And this now takes into account your needs, your vision, your aspiration. Probably you want to put up an office plus residential, you want to put up a hotel and a mix of some offices.
A mixed development.
A mixed development, or you just want a palatial house of 8 bedrooms or 9 bedrooms or whatever it is.
With a helipad.
With a
Why
helipad and a heated swimming pool and what have you. So the architect then actually picks your ideas and prepares the drawing, which is submitted for the approval. The last approval from the county government is structural engineering drawings, because city, a building is a brick and mortar and steel. So the engineers then pick what the architect has designed and tell you, city, you'll need Y8 or Y16 or Y20. Once that is finished, then you now go to NEMA for the environmental impact assessment.
Okay.
There's something that I want to ask. When you look through the act or you look at the building code and you say this is what you want to do, are there rules that govern the limit to what that building would be like? Whether, for instance, you are allowed 2 floors, 3 floors, 5 floors, 10, and if indeed it is 10, at what point are you required to have a lift in this building?
Yes, city. Remember, I came here to discuss regularization. Basically, in other words, these are structures that, in strict sense, you would call them non-authorized. They were put up without considerations in terms of what the building code provides, or even if they were put up with considerations in terms of what the building code provides. Because sometimes you can hire an engineer to supervise for you the building, an architect to draw it, but it is not approved. So in some instances, you find that, yes, the building is very sound, it's inhabited, but it has no papers.
Okay. So is it illegal?
Yeah, so you'd say actually it's legal.
Okay.
I mean, in strict sense.
Okay.
But what you are saying is that under the the opening, what I said, leaving no one behind.
Okay, Patrick.
Yeah.
As you talk about the regularization
Dennis,
of...
you know, I'm still stuck on this one. The reason I'm stuck on it.
Okay.
I am stuck on it because why I asked is when you talk about regularizing, as wherever you're going, you are then referring to ensuring that you abide by the regulations that exist. So, if indeed the idea of zoning then comes in, what is allowed here, what is not allowed here, etc., etc. I'm still asking the question. So, what then happens if somebody put up a building, which we've referred to generally as illegal, and now we are regularizing? What is it that we are going to do?
Take it down?
Yeah, good. Good question. We actually anticipated such instances. And I think I keep telling you that there are cases where buildings in this city have been demolished because they are either sitting on a riparian corridor. And I was going to actually discuss the Nairobi River Regeneration Program, which we are seriously involved in and is partly passing in these regularization areas. So a building that is not observing the levels city, and I would like you to take this from me. If it does not meet, for example, the levels in terms of the zoning policy for that area, basically it will have to come down. And that is provided for in that act.
It doesn't matter how big it is, it doesn't matter what area it's in.
City, you see, well, the regularization approach gives some discretion. I said it's an amnesty act.
Right.
It gives discretion, but there are levels. For instance, if it's a building that is next to the airport in the Tasia Utawala area, and it's found to be an obstruction, then it has to come down.
Okay.
There are no two ways about it.
Yeah.
So then how do you deal with, and that's buildings, because it seems as though if I have an approval and I have a piece of land and I want to put something up, I mean, I feel it's well within my right to do so. I get the approvals, that's done. Somebody somewhere is approving these things. Somebody somewhere is saying you can go ahead and do it. And if it comes later and you say that the authorization that was not given and the regularization then needs to take place, then one must ask, who is this person or who are these persons who are giving this approval? Because they cannot come from anywhere else but the county government. I cannot go, I as Ndu or CT just taking a merry walk along and say, oh, I approve. You may go ahead and build. It doesn't work like that.
So
Somebody's giving the approval. Where is this coming from?
The lands that I mentioned, for example, Tasia.
Okay.
Tasia was an NSSF land, and I'm sure there have been so many media stories about
it. Yeah.
Controversy about the Tasia land. This was a government land that was invaded by criminal gangs, occupied, subdivided illegally. I think it was around 1992 city. You are in this city then. Subdivided and illegally allocated, and without approval from either city council then, Ministry of Local Government or national government. It was developed and occupied, and people live there.
Okay.
It's the same thing that happened to the Syokimau land, that, the airport land,
Yes.
where people, unlike the one we are discussing here, that one people even had title deeds in Syokimau land.
And somebody
They had
approved
approvals
them.
from the county government of Machakos. They had developed. Look at the Portland land that was demolished last year, November. I mean, people had title deeds. There were approvals for construction.
So who's giving them?
But the land was illegal.
Patrick,
So,
who's giving these approvals?
so those title deeds were found to be illegally allocated.
By somebody in a
But
government
now the
facility.
Ministry of Lands is in a better position to explain how are those titles generated.
Okay, we're going to go to break in a minute, but something that's really pressing. That the two issues that, we're going to come back to this because somebody's giving these approvals, Patrick, but we're going to come back to that. Maybe we come back from a break. But there are two things that seem to have spawned all over the place. Boreholes and petrol stations. I just did a count. After the Nyayo Stadium roundabout, outbound on Mombasa Road, and the junction that takes you on the interchange towards Athi River, or then going towards Kitengela, there are 14 petrol stations. 14. How many kilometers are those? 5? There are 14 petrol, and that's outbound. We're not even talking about then what happens thereafter. That's just as an example. These are completed servicing petrol stations. There are a number of other petrol stations that are being constructed. There are some that are waiting to have other things added to them. Eastleigh is borehole city. So is Kilimani. But in order for you to sink a borehole anywhere, again, you need approval. And the question is, who is approving for all these boreholes to then be sunk? Who is approving for all these petrol stations? And are they well within their rights or within the city's county development for these things to happen in the manner in which they are happening?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, for boreholes, I think, I really wanted us to dwell so much on discussing regularization in the eastern side of the city. I hope we really get more time to
we will have
to discuss that, because I think those people equally are very important to this city, and we need to serve them. I think I repeat again, we must be able to ensure we do not leave anybody behind.
Sure.
This city belongs to the 6 million residents that will live in it. And as an urban planner, I think I'm tending to think that we now need to bring the voice of the people living in informal settlements.
It's true, but you can also use examples of things that are currently existent at present in terms of then what would happen for these other places that you talk about.
As regards the boreholes in Eastleigh and other areas you've mentioned, there is an agency called Water Regulatory Authority. That's the agency responsible for licensing of boreholes. Equally, for petrol service stations, there's a government agency called Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority.
Yes,
the one responsible for licensing of boreholes. Of
petrol stations.
So I think they are better placed in terms of. I'm aware, like for instance, IPRA is revising their regulations in terms of licensing of not only petrol stations but even LPG, filling stations. Yeah.
So the county doesn't play here at all?
Yeah, this licensing of boreholes actually starts with those agencies. Once they have no objection,
then they bring it to the county.
Then they bring it to the county.
And also the petrol stations have to be built.
Yeah.
So approvals have to
come from the county.
Yeah, and that's the complementary role that we have between national government, state parastatals, and county governments. If somebody has already gotten no objection from the statutory parastatal, really we restrict ourselves to a mandate.
As the urban planner, you don't have to say we have so many petrol stations
Just in this
5
area, we don't
kilometers.
need another one here. Can we
Well, I think Ndu has said there are 14. I would need to also go outside there.
count?
And confirm
Honestly,
the numbers
we can go
then.
together. We can count. They could be 15 actually, but
But
they're
I
not.
think also, Ndu, you need to appreciate. It's the same way. Sometimes I go to some places and you almost feel like, is this a town for pharmacies? There is one pharmacy from one place to another, and majority of the customers, in some cases, you find are ladies, and you really want to do a study and find out why do you have so many pharmacies in this particular place. I mean, we live in a liberal economy, so if those petrol stations have no business, they will fizzle out. So if EPRA has licensed them, it means they find that they're feasible wherever they are. But I think as an urban plan, I think my response to that would be we need to invest in mass rapid transit.
Okay.
For Mombasa Road, the Mombasa Road corridor, we cannot rely anymore on the expressway, which is already filling up. And for us, as through the new plan, our proposal on Mombasa Road was to do a BRT, bus rapid transit. If we do that, the petrol stations will fizzle out. But I think IPRA would be better placed to really explain the process and requirements of licensing the PSS.
Let's take a break on that note and come back and continue our discussion this morning with Patrick Analo, who is the CEC Chief Officer, Urban Development and Planning, Nairobi City County. We're going to come back and look at that approval question because it does bear a huge responsibility and role on regularization. It's 26 minutes to 10. We'll be back after this.
Hello and welcome to Health and Wellness, where we explore new health trends, wellness tips.
In the mental space, we never ask what is wrong. We always ask what happened.
We feel the pain of our patients.
And ways to just embrace a happier and healthy life. Small changes can make a very big difference to your overall health.
For this intervention, we don't use any general anesthesia.
Oh, really?
So the patient is awake with us, talking to us throughout the procedure.
If you start having chest pain and you're sweating a lot and you're not doing any physical activity, that's a very ominous sign that you're actually having a heart attack.
To be honest, we've actually done a CS with Mulika Muizi. You're being Mulikwad for you to remove that baby.
So let's incorporate these tips to our daily routine just to ensure our immune system is healthy and strong.
Join me, Zaitun Ali, every Sunday at 6 p.m. on Health and Wellness.
Brookside Probiotic Yogurt, you can use it in any form. Add it to your smoothies, drink it off the glass, and you will be able to enhance that healthy digestive system.
Unveiling Kenya's finest travel gems all in one place. From luxurious hotels to hidden dining treasures, Msafiri.ke is your ultimate gateway to the best of Kenya. Explore breathtaking destinations and must-visit spots effortlessly. Browse, book, and experience the heart of Kenyan hospitality with just a tap. Dive into Msafiri.ke now. Log in, secure your dream getaway, or call 0719 012 561 today.
It's amenities being set up and that it follows the CIDPs and the umbrella of the new plan, for example, that it follows that. Are you comfortable that it is, or are you uncomfortable that there's too much that's going on, then that essentially needs to be streamlined?
Yes, Ndu, I think, again, let me say that we are dealing with the historical failure of our landlords in our city. Ideally, we shouldn't have had people invading government land and settling on that government land. I think the land buying companies, which played a very key role in helping Kenyan Africans buy land that had originally been grabbed by the colonial settlers, should have actually gone up to the stage where they issue title deeds. I think the previous county governments and city council governments would have actually done more to ensure that we do not have people who stay in houses that they do not have government papers. And we are saying that this is what we are trying to address and do. These people actually also need to pay for services. They need to pay for waste management. They need to pay for infrastructure maintenance and expansion. They need to pay for property rates. And you can only do that once you have their data in terms of who they are, the properties they own, the kind of developments that take place there. Are they are safe? Do they meet the minimum development control and planning requirements? Because they are part of the city. We should never have people who collect rent from their tenants in Pipeline, in Mwiki, in Kasarani, in the areas of Nasara, in Tasia, and Utawala. And they do not pay rates. They are consuming government services in terms of water reticulation, sewer. Some even continue to go ahead and grab land that had been set aside for amenities, for schools, for health facilities. For example, we have a case we are fighting with in an area called Kwandege in Tasia, land which had been left for staff housing, for the health staff housing in Tasia. Somebody went ahead and put up a building, and then went ahead and actually rented it to the staff, to the health facility staff. So, and the governor went there, and the residents were telling the governor, "Your Excellency, I mean, look at this. This land here, was meant for staff housing for the staff who work in the health facility. Somebody has grabbed it, put up an apartment, and is now renting it to the nurses, to the doctors." The governor gave a directive that moving forward, that land must revert back to the county government. Do, for example, the area where we have Mama Lucy Hospital.
Yes. That
land was a donation by the people who actually, the company which owned that land, the entire area. It's called Kiambu Dandora. They set aside that land for construction of that hospital. Had they not done that, or had the national government not moved in, I mean, the people of that area would have not had that facility. And so we are saying this regularization program also helps the county government and the national government to protect land which had been surrendered for public use, for nursery schools, for children playground city, and this includes city council estates, Dandora, which was set up through funding from World Bank. And they came up with something called site and service. So you do the site, you build the houses, you give allotment to the tenants, but that process did not go further and complete in terms of giving the legal statutory ownership documents.
Right.
So there were so many other things which happened in that area. And seriously speaking, I think these people, we must bring them on board. Because if a building collapses in Tasia right now, Utawala, still the county government of Nairobi has a duty and responsibility to explain how did that building come up.
Yes, because you gave the approvals.
Yes. Yeah. In terms of approval, I think probably you've not gotten me, I've not come out clear. These buildings came up without approval from government.
So why?
And that's why we are now coming up with the word regularization.
Okay.
Regularization basically means bringing into development control framework informal structures or structures that have taken place without statutory approval.
I think let's talk about the statutory approvals that are required before someone sets up a building. And one key document that they need are title deeds. And you find these buildings do not have these title deeds. That means when you talk about regularization, title deed comes into the conversation. So then how are you working with the issuers of title deeds to ensure that the people that you're targeting have these documents, so that when you go to them or they come to you, they are ready with all the documents? Because then you might sit here and invite them, but without that specific document, there is no regularization that will happen. So what conversation are you having with the national government Ministry of Lands to ensure that these documents are availed or a process is started?
Yeah, so thank you so much. I think through the help of His Excellency the President and the Governor, there have been several intergovernmental meetings to address that issue. One, we have different types of schemes to be regularized. For example, we have a scheme where the original owner has a title deed. Let me give an example of the Kiambu Dandora area. The original land buying company had actually purchased that land and acquired a title deed. and then went ahead and subdivided the land and allocated to the members. So in this case, we are engaging the original owner who was a title deed and asking them, can you give us a list of the people who belong to, who are your shareholders and you sold their land to, where specifically is that particular land. You have another case, for example, in Lakisama, equally. The original owner has a land, has a title deed, sold the land. But where we do not have titles, we have a program, Dennis, with the Ministry of Land, where the land is surveyed. We prepare the titling documents, and then now we move forward to deal with the specific people who actually are the developers or the occupiers of the land. So it's a program between remember, titling has not been devolved. It's a responsibility of the Chief Registrar of Land.
Okay.
So you cannot complete this regularization program without involving the Ministry of Lands.
Okay.
And you are working very closely with them and the National Lands Commission.
So for these developments that have been put up, which by your own admission have been done without approval, what's the process then for dealing with those? And there are reasons why that you need certain approval. If a building falls today, and then we find out that there was no county approval for that building to go up in the first place, liability falls heavily on the county, whether it's loss of life, whether it's the loss of property, destruction of property, whatever the case may be, liability falls on county. So there's also, when you talk about regularization, there's the work to be done of constant checks, constant effectiveness and efficiency. So those questions will come later. So the question is today, is there a collective knowledge or awareness of those developments that are currently up, which have not been approved and that should be earmarked either for destruction or earmarked for, serious reprimand when it comes to those who've put them up?
Yeah, so one, the process starts with the physical planning, which looks at it has to map out the entire scheme, look at the number of plots that exist and have been developed, look at the way leaves in terms of if there are any way leaves passing through the land, for example, power way leave, water way leave. Basically prepare the land use plan, spatial plan. And then now we have an architect and an engineer coming in who look at the structures one by one, subjected to tests in terms of structural integrity. The engineers have a scientific way of doing that. The architects will look at the soundness in terms of lighting, accessibility. Do you have adequate staircases? Do you have areas that require that the lifts have to be fitted? Do you have ample access to parking? Now, all this will be done, and then the architects must sign and the engineers must sign an indemnity form, an undertaking. That yes, we place our signature and undertaking on a report on this particular building. We've subjected it to technical assessment, and we recommend that the county considers it for regularization. Another one, they will say, we've evaluated this building. We've found that it has some issues, and the issues are as listed below, and these are our recommendations. These will be passed upon the developer to comply to. And now the county will be left behind to ensure those recommendations are implemented. The third one will be the ones that have to be brought down. Then it's an either way, even if regularization was not there, a building that is not sound. Is not sound. And that, again, that recommendation will have to be provided.
Which begs the question, Patrick, with this regularization, there's something that you've mentioned which is very critical in terms of all these signatures that are signed by the engineers, the architecture, and all these goes into issuing the occupational license for these buildings and whatnot. So in terms of percentage in this Nairobi, how many people live in estates that do not have these occupational licenses?
I think I listed we have about 30 schemes which we have identified. We've looked at them, we've given a preliminary assessment, and they are ready for regularization. And majorly, if you remember, I said these are mainly in the 4 embakassis. Mbokasi East, like this area that covers Utawala, Tasia.
Yeah.
Then we have the area of Mwiki and Kasarani, and historically this area was settled through land buying companies. Then you have the city council schemes in the areas of Kariobangi, we have Dandora, we have Umoja 3. Those we've already mapped out the area. We are doing census. You asked me whether somebody has identified the buildings. We are doing the census in terms of looking at the numbers of the structures that we have to literally deal with, one after the other.
So you don't have a number?
I think it's a program that fully will go into full blast upon approval of the County Assembly of Nairobi has a role also to play in this. They must approve the law that they have, the regularization law, but also the Physical Land Use Planning Act also gives powers on the CEC, the County Executive Committee member, to undertake development, control, interventions and measures on structures which are occupied by people but have not met statutory approval. Statutory approval includes even moving a window like this one.
Absolutely.
I mean, from where it is to another location. It's
Felling
not just
a tree, cutting down a tree.
Yes, of course.
Requires that. And so we're talking about the very basic. And so, and that's why we're met with chagrin when we hear that an entire building of 6 floors is up in plain sight and doesn't have approval when you need the approval of the county to cut down a tree.
Yeah. So what happens, Andu? There have been one. We are dealing with the history of the city, the failures of our history in the past, and I would say this is a failure in terms of a land tenure management. But secondly, there have been several arrests in some of these cases I'm mentioning to you. But when you take these people before a magistrate, the first question is definition of who the person is, where the development is taking place. If you are not able to produce a statutory land ownership document, the case collapses. You're not able to proceed because, I mean, you cannot. I mean, they argue that what proof can you produce that in actual sense, actually, these people was developing this property at this location, this is the land reference number. So that's why the former government, actually, the regularization program, and Dennis, started with the issuance of ownership documents. And you've asked that question. There must be title deeds or leases or authenticated allotment letters. So it is after those documents are in place, then now you can proceed to the next step of now having architectural drawings and engineering drawings for approval.
Okay. Yeah. One of the other issues that grabs a lot of attention is the affordable housing projects that will be taking place in the city. Now, in terms of procurement, in terms of awarding, in terms of scrutiny when it is coming into place for who will be awarded those contracts. Of course, the county is under scrutiny in terms of transparency when it comes to this. Serving public interest is a big deal when it comes to the affordable housing project. Cast some light upon that in terms of what's happening, in terms of transparency when it comes to awarding of some of these contracts to build some of these schemes.
Yeah, and
it all plays a role in regularization, I'm sure you will agree.
There's a whole Department of Housing and Urban Renewal with a colleague chief officer. I think that colleague is better placed to respond to, like, in terms of the process of procurement and contracting. But I will give just an overall perspective in terms of from a planning viewpoint.
Yes.
The affordable housing program, I think, which also has been extended by the ministry now, I think they have also introduced an element of social housing, is an effort to try and address the challenge of housing in our urban areas. Currently, we have a deficit of 150,000 housing shortage in our urban areas, and it keeps increasing annually. In Nairobi, I was here and I told you almost 60% of our city residents live in informal settlements. And there are people who really get worried when they see clouds gathering in our city that it's going to rain. There are people who feel so much, worried when they hear there's a fire outbreak. They don't know whether it is their settlement that has been affected. So the county government of Nairobi, picking cue on the national government manifesto efforts on on addressing housing challenge, is implementing affordable housing programs in the city of Nairobi, and this mainly focuses on urban renewal of the original county estates. For example, the Woodley estate, which is an estate that belongs to the county. It was established in 30s and 40s for senior citizens of the city. We have areas like Makongeni, Kaloleni, Shaodimboyo, Kariobangi. When you go to those estates, they are experiencing urban decay and derelict. The houses which were constructed during colonial days for housing of the African population. And with a growing city population now at 6 million, honestly speaking, we need to cater for the increased population. The principle I have seen the governor advocate in terms of affordable housing, priority is to the sitting owners of the houses. These are the owners of these estates. They're the ones who have kept them. On behalf of the county government of Nairobi, they will have to be given first priority. In Woodley, I saw him compensate them up to a tune of almost 1 million Kenyan shillings, and given them an advance allocation of those houses once they will be completed.
A preferential preferential arrangement.
Yeah, of course. Yes. And I think as a city, my colleagues, really we need to have a serious conversation on how to address the challenge of urban housing. And city, just before I finish, before 1992, you remember, and I've also discussed here, housing was mainly a major responsibility. And if you look at the Tom Mboya policy for Africanization of the Kenyan economy, he speaks widely about urban housing as a responsibility of government. The moment World Bank told Kenyan government to forget the business of urban housing, that's when we started having people living in cotton houses, polythene bag houses. This administration, these county governments must confront the issue of urban housing. We cannot have people coming from Europe to come and have a tourist, visit in Kibera slums, in Mathare slums, shooting movies and videos to be shown at Hollywood. I mean, we must confront this issue of urban housing and confront it fairly in terms of making sure the real people who have to benefit in those houses that we produce actually benefit.
As the planner for the county, what powers do you have for enforcing these laws? Because, for instance, if you look at the building code, there's a gentleman who visited here once, and he sent me a message because he knows that you're coming to the show. He said, there's an ongoing construction along a riparian stretch bordering Mukuru and Kware in Embakasi South. They all got approvals from NCA, NEMA, and NCC. Now, the Building Code 2024 speaks to this and talks about building that cannot be put up in areas where there are hazardous materials, cannot be put up in flood maps, riparian land, or seismic zoning. Now, he even sent a picture. When you look at the picture, it is clear that this falls into the category of what he's speaking about. That's why I ask about enforcement, because yes, you're the planner.
Yeah, so I'm